Black Yellow Luffy Masterclass for free. Is it possible? Yes and no. I started this video as a knowledge check before Bandai Cardfest Utrecht, so it's added benefit for you to learn a thing or two. However, I'm not a pro player. I have some top 64 and top 32 finishes on regional level tournaments, and I finished in top 64 in Bandai Cardfest Utrecht. Therefore, let me know in the comments any additional input. This guide will start from complete zero and finish around intermediate level. Without further ado, let's begin. As with any leader, we need to start by asking ourselves, why do we want to play BY Luffy? Short answer, because he is unfair on the fundamental level and gives us a good matchup spread in the current meta. But why is that? BY Luffy Leader's effect reads as follows. Your face-up life cards are placed at the bottom of your deck instead of being added to your hand according to the rules. If you have two Dawn cards attached, activate main once per turn. You may trash one card from your hand. If you have 0 life cards, add up to 2 character cards with a cost of 5 from your hand or trash to the top of your life cards face up. At first, nothing special. Sure, we can heal 2 life for a cost of 1 card, but they are face up, so if opponent attacks hard in their turn, we will be bottom decking both of them, generating no card advantage. However, we have cards that are custom made to abuse this leader's effect. I'm talking about 3 brothers, Ace, Sabo, Luffy, in short, ASL. In history of One Piece card game, top meta leaders generated unfair advantage either by high power of the leader, for example Whitebeard having 6000 power, taking life early to turtle up in the mid-late game, example Kid and Bonnie, or by utilizing trash as a resource, example any black deck, notably Sakazuki and Lucci. Thanks to the 3 brothers and Gecko Moria character, Black Yellow Luffy has it all inclusive. To understand how the advantage is being generated, let's look at baby versions of ASL. Each of them can transform into bigger version if it's a top life card during transformation. But that's not all. In addition, each successful transformation buffs our leader's power by 2000 until the end of our opponent's turn. But how do we make sure that our top life card is the big brother? The most basic scenario is we go to 0 life and use leader effect to fill up life with 2 brothers of choice, either from trash or hand. Afterwards, we just need to play the baby versions. And use their effect to transform into the big versions and buff our leader plus 2000 per transformation. This is what most of the players call awakening or transformation. Even though it's a very powerful combo, you probably already noticed one downside. We are losing a lot of hand cards in the process. 3 of them to be exact. 1 for the leader's effect and 2 babies from hand. But there is one more card in a deck that on 10 Dawn makes this combo broken. Gecko Moria, boogeyman of the format. After successful first awakening, as long as we have baby versions of 3 brothers in a trash, we can do the following combo. 2 Dawn under the leader and discard a card for the leader's effect. Play Gecko Moria and summon 2 babies. Transform the babies accordingly and buff your leader. As you can see, this 10 Dawn and 2 cards investment resulted in 9000 power base leader until opponent's next turn and 18 Dawn of characters on board. Absolutely broken. Once the engine is running and we are able to chain Gecko Moria, we are unstoppable with endless value. However, how do we get there? You probably already noticed that smart players, when playing against BY Luffy, will try to create a situation to get as many cards as possible from from him before the awakening. Most common strategy is to put BY Luffy around 2 life and build the board big enough to threaten little attack if life is taken carelessly. And here come into play the so-called awakeners. Each of these cards allows us to reduce our own life. 5-cost Luffy is one of our best characters to play on curve. His effect allows us to buff him into 8000 power character until end of opponent's turn, then draw a card and trash a card from our life. If this character sticks on board, it's a very bad news for our opponent. 8000 power swing each turn and awakening on demand, using the effect every turn. Amazing card. Lampe. 2k counter that for mere 1 Dawn allows us to take a life card to hand and draw a card. The best awakener in the deck if you need card advantage. Iori, another 2k counter that allows us to awaken in slightly different way. We can take a life card to hand and plant any other card of our choice into life. Most often it will be Big Brother that we later transform by playing baby from hand. Makino, last 2k counter of choice, allows us to take 1 card from life into hand. If played early, we can check and rearrange our life however we want. Very good for slower matchups or when we want to speed up awakening if we are lucky enough to high roll Big Brothers in life. There is also added benefit to Makino against yellow and purple decks. Cards like 9-cost Big Mom and 8-cost Katakuri can clock our life and prevent the awakening, but Makino can easily turn around the situation into a benefit. Ivankov, not so popular in the West, but a viable awakener nonetheless. Very strong against aggressive decks as he allows us to awaken when developing a blocker at the same time. However, it's the biggest card investment across of all the awakeners, so many players cut him from the list. Simple Ivankov combo is to play him down, trash the top life, and put Big Brother into life, to follow up with the baby from hand. Unfortunately, it's a 3 cards combo from hand. Okay, I think we understand now why the deck is one of the best in the meta. We can take the life early to find the combo pieces and then protect the buffed up leader. In case our opponent tries to starve us, we can take our own life with the benefit from the character cards, or just slam down our 5-cost characters and push face to force the attack into us. Let me show you the most basic game plan so we can understand the flow of the game to proceed later into more advanced tactics. Going first, 1 Dawn turn, play Garp and search for any missing combo pieces. 3 Dawn turn, attack 5k with Garp and leader to apply early pressure. 5 Dawn turn, attack with leader, play 5-cost Luffy. Depending on the game state, we can activate Luffy's effect, or pass. 7 Dawn turn. Play Big Brother of your choice. Most often it will be Sabo. Remaining 2 Dawn you can either use for attacking searching for missing combo pieces, or to play down the baby in preparation for awakening turn. However, be mindful if you decide to do so to play the baby first before the Sabo's effect to protect it from KO effects. 9th on turn. Most often the most optimal turn to awaken using awakeners and babies. For example, play Ivankov. Activate the effect, trashing the life. Present the 5-cost brother, put on top. Play the baby Luffy. Activate baby Luffy. Buff the leader. Activate Luffy effect. Draw a card. Trash life. Now we are ready to awaken if needed one more time. Attach to leader. Trash a card for leader's effect. Heal up. Play baby from hand to awaken second time. Activate. Buff the leader. Sabo effect. Draw 2. And trash 2. And we are good to go. Either attack or keep the blocker standing depending on the board state. 10th on turn, as we already know, the most optimal play will be to chain Gecko Moria, but we saw it already, so let's move on to going second. 2nd on turn, play Garp. Search for the missing combo pieces. 4th on turn, play a 4-cost character. Or if not possible, you can attack 5k with Luffy and 6k with Garp by attaching the Dawn. 6th on turn, play 5-cost Luffy. Depending how much life do we have, we can activate the effect. And the remaining Dawn we can use to search or attack with our characters, depending on the game state. If your opponent isn't starving you and didn't get rid of the Kuzan, you might be already at 2 life because they attacked on 3th on turn and 5th on turn. In this case, if they played any 5-cost the turn before, on 6th Dawn you can swing with Kuzan, reduce the character, and then for example play Rocket Luffy to pop the character and draw a card. Unfortunately, most of the time it's not the case, so there is one more possibility. If they get rid of Kuzan, as you can see, I don't have much stuff in trash, and on the next turn I probably want to awaken due to low life. What I can do to prepare better and don't lose the resources, we can play Sabo for 5. Done. Activate the effect, draw 2. And trash the pieces of the big brothers that we don't need right now for better awakening next turn. For example, Luffy and Luffy. If we are still missing any pieces like babies or big brothers for awakening next turn, and we are already on the low life total, we can use one remaining Dawn for any searcher if we have them. As you can see, 6th Dawn turn is much more flexible depending on your opponent's behavior, so obviously it's much more preferred turn order to go second for these beautiful early turns. 8th Dawn turn, most often the most optimal turn to awaken using awakeners and babies. For example, play Hiyori for 2. Take the top life. Place one of the big brothers, in this case Big Monkey D. Luffy, to transform with the baby. Activate. Buff the leader. Activate Luffy's effect to save cards in hand. Draw 1. Trash. Attach 2 down to leader. Trash 1 card for the awakening. Place the big brothers of your choice back into life, based on what babies you have in hand. If you need higher power, play the baby for the remaining 2 dons. Activate. Buff the leader for 9000 power base and follow up with the Sabo effect or any other big brother that you play. Then on turn and onwards, as already mentioned, we are really happy with the Gecko Moria chain, but we already saw it, so let's save some time. And as you can see, going second, our turns are much clearer and we have a lot of comfort to awaken on 8th on turn and follow up with Gecko Moria chain on 10 and after. These are the most basic turns, going first and second. However, it's a card game and we need to be ready to navigate many different matchups and game scenarios. Before we move on, let's speak shortly about card choices and flex slots in a deck. I think this is the core of a deck. I would not cut any cards as they are crucial for the deck to function. 4 Garbs and at least 2 search events totaling 6 searchers. As a combo deck, we must be sure we can carry out our game plan consistently. Finding the pieces as soon as possible is our top priority. 8 2k counters / awakeners. 4 copies of Flampe, the most cost efficient awakener. 4 copies of Hiyori allows us very strong combo plays and create a board state with 9k base leader and 1 life. 8 babies for Luffy and for Sabo. They have the best transformation options in the game. 12 big brothers for blocker Sabo, the strongest blocker in the game, 6000 power, KO protection for the whole board and card filtering to find another Moria. 4 copies of 5 cost Luffy. Powerful Beatstick and Awakener in 1 card. 4 copies of Rocket Luffy. 6000 power character, removal and card draw in 1 card. Or Gecko Moria. Do I even need to explain at this point? Ban this card and the deck is trash. It gives us 38 core cards total. Here are the cards I played in 8.5 meta to fill up the list. 2 copies of Makino. I like to play 10 2k counters total. And on top of that, Makino allows us to easily unlock the life versus characters like 9 cost Big Mom and 8 cost Katakuri. Or 4 cost Kuzan. In 8.5, this card is bad only against Doffy. In all the other matchups, it's amazing and gives us a fighting chance if we are unlucky enough to play against Bonnie. 2 copies of Blocker Nami. Amazing discovery by Italian players. We play Nami instead of Ivankov for the pure late game value, and currently there is no power based removal, so no pressure for 4k statline like back in the RP low meta. 2-2 ace. Added consistency. With this inclusion we total 10 baby and 14 big brother targets. On paper we should never miss a search. On top of that, ace is amazing to fight board versus blue Doflamingo. So that's the full list I played in Utrecht. However, the best part about playing BY Luffy is that you can adjust the list to your likings by choosing correct tech card choices. So let me show you some of them. Yellow Sabo. Good card versus Bonnie to KO Cavendish on curve while getting us closer to awakening. Also very useful versus ST14 Luffy to KO 5 cost Rebecca. Cheap way to get rid of any 5 cost blocker for the final push. Just put Yellow Sabo in life, play baby from hand and poof! You just made a clear way for final attack. Be mindful though that you need to trash a life card for a KO cost, so Sabo must be placed as a top life. Zombie Luffy. This card is mainly played to catch opponents in mirror off guard. Paired with cost reduction can rid of blocker Sabo because effect is trash and not KO. Ice Age. If your meta is full of 9 cost characters like Green Zoro, this is the best reduction card to pair with Rocket Luffy. However, in current meta most of the threats are 8 cost or lower, so I don't see a need to run this card anymore. 10 cost Kuzan. Amazing card versus Bonnie, especially if they starve you. Not only we are able to answer any threat, We also have a big body presence which is key to victory in this matchup. Kingdom Come, also known as Raigo. One card answer for anything. I think it was too early to play this card in 8.5 because most of the threats were 8 cost and lower. However, this card really shines in OPO9 meta, where we have more leaders with threatening boss monsters. Stinger Pistol, also known as Shigan. Another card to KO 5 cost or less characters, but also to fill up the trash. Very useful versus Bonnie, however most players adapted Yellow Sabo instead. 4 cost character of your choice. The only missing puzzle for BY Luffy deck building was Ford on turn going second. Most players play 4 copies of Kuzan because this card is amazing in every matchup except Blue Doffy. However, you can play any 4 cost to fill up the curve depending on your needs. Most common choices are Borsalino to have early blocker on board versus aggro matchups, or 4 cost Perona that might catch some opponents off guard. We know the basics, we know the list. We know the tech choices. Let's speak about more advanced concepts now. Searchers. In the early game we want to find our combo piece for explosive awakening turn and follow up with Gecko Moria chain. However, we should really pay attention when and why we play our searchers. In most matchups it's good to play Garb early to have another swing on turn 2, asking opponent for 2 cards instead of jamming with leader. There will be situations where instead of Garb we start the game with search event in hand. And this is the scenario where we really need to think if we want to search already. In the early game we don't know exactly which pieces we have to search because we didn't draw enough cards yet. If we search in wrong moments, we can bottom deck key pieces like Gecko Moria, Kuzan, Awakeners or Nami. But let me give you an example. If I go second and start with search event in hand and Flampe versus Black Lucci or Bonnie, if I'm missing Kuzan, there is no reason for me to search on the first turn. More important is trying to find a Kuzan for turn 2 play than searching for combo pieces now and risking bottom decking. So preferable play here would be to delay the search and for example play Flampe to draw 2 cards and pass. At the start of the second turn, we will draw. So we created the situation where we already had 3 chances to draw our 4th on play. If we drew Kuzan, great. If not, then maybe we drew some combo pieces. So we have more knowledge now what is missing. Additionally, on the next turn, we most likely want to play a 5 cost brother. So it's good time to search for a play now if we still don't have it. This is just a simple example how to approach searching and take it to the next level. Sometimes you will have situation where you want to search like crazy, even though you have pieces in hand. Let's say you are unlucky and bottom deck all the Morias on the first search. You will have time to dig through the deck to hit the stack that was bottom decked to draw Moria on your 10th on turn. You have 5 cards in hand at the start of the game and 4 in life. Going second until 10th on turn, you will draw another 5 cards. It means that after first search, you will need to dig through around 31 additional cards to see Moria. You can do it by searching or drawing with cards like Luffy and Sabo. So keep in mind how deep are you digging. And here we go to the actions priority, which should be a familiar topic for any Sakazuki players back in the days. Rule of thumb is first always draw and then search. Reasoning is very simple. You have a lot of cards that are not searchable in a deck, and if you draw first, then you have more information what are you looking for. If we want to dive deeper, first you should always use action that doesn't require any Dawn investment, so for example attack with Rocket Luffy and pop him for draw. It's especially important if you are already on 10 Dawn and maybe didn't find Moria yet. By popping Rocket first, you didn't invest any Dawn and still can find Moria to play this turn. The same goes for 5 cost Luffy. In the early and mid game, depending on card you want to find, you may opt to playing Flampe or Hiyori instead of using 5 cost Luffy effect. It's simply because Luffy is trashing card from life, and if you suspect that you might have Moria in life, it might be more beneficial to draw card from life. And just like that, we move to another important topic, 5 cost Luffy. Most of the time, it's the best play on 5 or 6 Dawn turn. The common question is, Should I use the effect right away after playing him or wait until next turn? And I like simplified approach to the topic. If your opponent is starving you and you are still on 4 life, in most cases it's okay to use the effect to see more cards and get closer to awakening. Especially in matchups where you suspect your opponent removing 5 cost Luffy on his turn. However, if you are already on 3 life or lower, or your opponent's board can threaten lethal once you take a life, then obviously there is no reason to do that. Next question in this matter is, should I protect the life? And it's different in every matchup. General rule of thumb is, if your opponent can threaten more attacks than life total plus blockers on your board, you have to counter the smallest attack. As it's the lowest card investment and also most of the time, you will counter with one of Big Brothers to set up the trash. Another situation when you want to defend life is when you have 5 cost Luffy on board and want to use his effect next turn, but not awaken. Example, you played Luffy on 5 dawn turn and you are at 3 life. If your opponent attacks for 5k, consider countering the attack. This way you can still threaten using Luffy's effect next turn for free draw and AK attack. On top of that, on 7 dawn is generally the bad idea to awaken, so most often you will play Sabo to protect the Luffy and either search, play baby or swing 7k with leader. Just please remember to play baby before Sabo, so you have it protected. Proper sequencing wins games. Yet another situation when you want to defend is when you play against blue decks that run pudding. Sometimes we might even counter big swing with one card to lower the hand size, but still take the life to play around it. On the contrary, you want to take the life before your awakening turn to preserve the resources in hand. Awakeners are amazing, but our opponent's attack is a free awakener that allows us to keep 2k counter in hand. So if you know you will awaken on the next turn anyway, most likely on 8 and 9 dawn turn, just take the life. And here we move to the next topic. How and when to awaken. For this topic we could go on deep dive on a separate video itself, but for the purposes of this guide let's set some simple rules. Overall, full awakening on 6 or 7 dawn turn is a bad idea. You need to understand that once you awaken you will be losing cards on each following turn. That's why our game plan is to delay awakening to 8 and 9 dawn turn, or even 10 dawn turns if we are not ready yet. Not to mention that if you awaken on 6 or 7 dawn turn, you need to have additional babies in hand to awaken also on the next turn, because it's too early to chain Moria, because you will be missing dawn cards to attach for leader's effect. The highest card value awakening you can do is with Flamp. Example, 8 dawn turn, 2 life, empty board. You can play double Flampe to essentially draw 4 cards. 2 dawn to leader to use the effect. And then the decision is yours. You have enough dawn to do the full awakening and develop the board plus 9000 power base leader. You can transform with baby once for the most needed big brother for a turn and stay on 1 life, 7k power leader. Or you can opt to not transform at all and keep 2 life and develop a 4 cost body. Such situation is most commonly known as 5k leader to fake life. It means that we accept that opponent will push at least one of these life cards and bottom deck a fake, but next turn our awakening will be much stronger and we save babies in hand. The most crucial skill is to evaluate when do you need to be 5, 7 or 9k leader. 5k leader base is good if you have a lot of big brothers, duplicates and can sacrifice at least one to be bottom decked. It's very good awakening if your opponent can threaten lethal during this turn. If our opponent doesn't attack at all and we have 5 cost Luffy on board, next turn brings a lot of value. Because you can use Luffy's effect for a draw and burn 1 life, and then proceed with transformation to be 7k 2 life or 9k 1 life leader. Huge advantage. 7k leader base 1 life awakening is good if your opponent has a lot of small characters. Maximum 5k power that can threaten push next turn. In this way we are forcing them to invest at least 2 Dawn for each attack. Most common big brother to play in this setup is Sabo for additional protection of 1 life card. It's especially crucial in matchups where opponent plays cards like Diable Jambe or Perfume Femur. We need to create a situation to awaken first as 5k base 2 life cards or 7k base 1 life card, and preserve the life to start the loop next turn as 9k power 1 life card leader. The last awakening option is not so popular on 8 Dawn awakening turn. There must be overwhelming pressure of 6k power characters on board, and we need to play against a deck that can't threaten unblockable push to go directly into 9k power 0 life leader. If we play against decks that we need to loop 9k power 1 life leader, there is also option of awakening with Hiyori, because we are not burning life but replace it with card from our hand. Very simple awakening combo on 8 Dawn is: play Hiyori for 2 Dawn and take life. Put 5 cost Luffy in life and transform with baby. Draw card, burn life with 5 cost Luffy. Attach 2 Dawn to leader and do the effect. Decide if you need to be 7k 2 life leader or 9k 1 life leader. These are the very basics of evaluating awakening turns. If you want to skyrocket your win ratio as BY Luffy, please always think twice which scenario and power of your leader versus life cards is needed for any given situation and how to preserve the most resources. Before we move to matchups, let me show you some useful line of plays for every BY Luffy player. If you expect a lot of aggressive matchups, like for example Blood of Flamingo or Zoro, it's a good idea to include Ivankov in your deck for very simple combo on 7 Dawn turn. Most of the time you will be already pushed in the lethal range and you are forced to awaken early. And here comes Ivankov to stop some of this pressure. What you need to understand is that the aggressive decks most of the time play small characters. So early awakening like that is enough if you stay on 7000 power. Let me show you the example. It's even better if you have Ace or Rocket Luffy for such situations. You play Ivankov for 3 Dawn. Activate Ivankov effect, trashing the life, and you need to show to your opponent the card from your hand that you will be placing in life. And look, now you have exactly 4 Dawn. What you can do: play the baby from the big brother you just placed in life, transform, Ace on board, buffing the leader, and remaining 2 Dawn, trash a card for leader's effect, and put the life. This situation we don't want to do anything else, not like we have any remaining dawns, but For the presentation purposes, there is no reason to awaken any further in the early or mid game, especially on such early dawns. What we created now, we have one attacker with rush that can clean easily 5000 power character, and on top of that we have 9k swing, which can threaten even bigger characters if needed, but most of the time you will just clear rested characters from your opponent. And now your opponent has a tough situation because you have blocker on board that they need to invest resources to remove to even try to clear ace or push your life. If they don't do anything about it, the next turn you are untapping with the strong attacker on board with 2 life that you can use however you want, and apparently all this aggro pressure is gone. And even better if your opponent doesn't have any removal in hand, because then even if they decide to attack into ace, first of all they need to invest at least 2 dawn, and on top of that they cannot really jam him because one of the attacks we are blocking for free with Ivankov. You can do the same with Hiyori, especially maybe if you are the beginner with the black-yellow Luffy, you might have the situation against aggro deck like maybe Zoro, where he can push you to up to 1 life on your 6th dawn turn. Then you can utilize Hiyori as a panic button to get some survival and clear the board. So here the combo is quite simple. Play the Hiyori for 2, take the life, and then you need to decide which of the big brothers will help you the most. Zoro doesn't really have any good removal, so maybe we put the Sabo for now. And then, like previously, play the Sabo, transform, buff the leader. 7k is really hard for Zoro to overcome. Then you can use Sabo's effect to filter the hand, searching for Moria maybe, but it's not so relevant now. And then attach the Dawn and swing 9 into some of the rested characters. Follow up by trashing the character for leader's effect, and here the same story as before. Place the life, and depending what your opponent has on board and how he approaches this aggressive strategy, you will most likely survive the next turn either by blocking with Sabo, or they need to invest too many dawns to push 7k into leader, and even if they push hard, you still have a buffer of 2 lives. Obviously, if possible, don't allow your opponent to push you too much in the range of 6 and 7 dawn, but sometimes it just happens, so just so you know that you have some panic button. One more thing that Hiyori and Ivankov can do for you in the mid game, if you are missing the baby Luffy for example and want to elevate some pressure, you can always use the Hiyori's effect to put the Rocket Luffy back in life and don't activate anything. So when your opponent attacks, especially leaders like Zoro and Doflamingo, they will trigger the Luffy to clear one of the attacks because he was face down. It's important to note, Hiyori and also Ivankov, they both put the card face down. Ivankov is a little bit different because you need to show to your opponent what you planned in your life, but the idea is the same. Just to survive one more turn. Maybe I find Moria, maybe I find the baby that I needed, and your opponent needs to think twice if they really want to push into this trigger. Maybe they will pass a turn. It all depends on different situations, so play as much as possible to recognize them, not to get pushed too fast. Another thing to understand about 7 dawn turn, there is another not really combo but play you can do that we already discussed briefly, and this is to evaluate if you really need to awaken this turn, because if you have Baby and Sabo in hand, you can actually survive the next turn depending how many attacks your opponent has, and still prepare really strong 9-Dawn awakening turn and even save 2-Dawn on your baby development. So in such situation, if you evaluate that you can survive the next turn, it might be much smarter to just swing 5 with leader. Then you play the baby for 2. Especially against opponents like Lucci or any KO effects, and follow up with Sabo. And that's your turn, because Sabo will draw you 2 cards that you can filter the rest of the cards that you have in hand and set up the trash for the next turn. And the baby will stay on board waiting for the awakening on your next turn. So once you untap on 9-Dawn, the game is already over. This idea is only bad against blue decks or any decks that can bottom deck pieces, because like that, you are on 7-Dawn, opponent will be on 8, boom, Gravity Blade, both guys are going bottom deck and you just lost the game. So be mindful only against the decks with KO effects, not against the decks with bottom deck or any other form of removal. Another combo to discuss that is again not really the combo, but like thinking about the game overall, is when your opponent is starving you like that. So you're still at 4 life somehow at the 10-Dawn turn, or some higher life total. And some BY Luffy players start to panic, start to think, how should I take all this life at once? But this is wrong approach. Don't waste the resources in this way. You can still win opponents in a traditional way. If they are starving you, then what? Then it means that every turn you are attacking with your leader or with your characters that you played in previous turns, and they need to react somehow. Sure, in the meantime they will build a board and try to threaten you later with one big flurry of attacks. But to go down from 4 lives into death zone, they will need to connect 5 attacks. And normally if they don't attack you, you start pushing them, they need to start attacking you sooner or later. So to cover up such situation, you can push even better if you just swing 5 at 10 on turn and then follow up just with 2 5-cost characters, the big brothers. In such situations, be mindful not to trash them, because you will be not transforming, so why are you trashing them? Just keep them in hand, don't counter any swings obviously, and then just play both of them for 10-Dawn and you are ready to go. Luffy is protected, obviously be mindful of blue decks, but anything that has KO effects, this board is untouchable. And the next turn, you can just start pushing. The other variation of this play will be playing 2 5-cost Luffys at once, or maybe one was already on board, but in the situation like that, if you play them this turn, don't use the effects, you don't need to. Because if right now your opponent is not attacking you, he gives you a lot of advantage. And why? Because when you untap on the next turn, you can activate both of them. So just to make it faster, you will be trashing 2 and drawing 2. And now we are still at the 10-Dawn and you are apparently in the range for the awakening. And at this point, if they were starving you all the time, you were drawing cards, you will have 2 awakeners in hand. And then apparently from 4 life, you are awakened and maybe even put 2 fake lives, whatever is needed in such situation, and you are ahead. You're swinging 2 times 8, and depending how you awaken and what you have on board, maybe even more. Maybe put even ace from the awakening. It all depends on the board state, but this is just an idea to not tunnel vision into awakening if it's not really needed. We already spoke how to evaluate it, but this is, let's say, the next step, how to play around certain situation. Because it's not so easy to remove the threats like that, 5-cost character 6000 power untapped, and develop the board in the same time, or threaten little from 4 life. So you put your opponent, or they put themselves in the situation that is lose-lose. If they invest to remove your characters, it's okay because you are still on 4 life and you will swing them. and the next turn you can play another ones, or even Gecko Moria. And this is another thing that we were doing in the Sakazuki meta especially, that we call value Moria or Moria on curve. So basically, if you are not threatened and you are able to play Sabo on the 6th on turn, try to set up the trash in such way that you have Kuzan and something of the lower cost. It can be Garp for the search, it can be Flampe if you are still at 4 life, but some kind of value, because then again 8 on turn, if you swing 5 here, you are getting 1 card or they are taking the life, and our next attacks will be only bigger, and then you just play Gecko Moria or 8 Dawn and get a lot of value. Because you play those two guys, you draw from Kuzan, then you search from Garp, and apparently you didn't lose any value from hand. And now it's really hard for your opponent to do anything about it, because at most they need to decide, are we getting rid of Kuzan, are we getting rid of Moria? Let's say even if they got rid of this Sabo last turn, now they have a question, am I getting rid of Kuzan or am I getting rid of Moria? If they want to clear Moria, most of the time they will invest a lot of resources. If they clear Moria, play the Eikos character, then Kuzan is threatening with Rocket Luffy, because Kuzan will reduce them. So they might want to clear Kuzan, but then you have Moria on board and you will be pushing them for 9000 power every turn. So again, we created a situation that is lose-lose. I hope you understand now that when the opponent is starving you, they are giving you game for free. Either you can generate the resources with Fist Luffy, or you just play your stuff on curve and win the traditional way by applying pressure because your opponent is doing nothing. Okay, now for the last cool combo against some opponents, especially the ones that keep you at 2 life but you are already at 10 down, you can catch them off guard. The only thing that you need to do is to have Moria in hand and Fist Luffy and set up Hiyori or Ivankov and Baby Luffy in trash. So you can have a very explosive turn. Let's prepare already 2 dawns on the leader and then 8 dawns obviously for Gecko Moria. And you play your baby and the awakener. So Hiyori will take the card to your hand. It was Rocket Luffy, but let's put back the Fist Luffy and activate the baby to transform. Okay, we buff the leader, plus 2000, and then activate the Fist Luffy to draw card and burn the life. And apparently we are in the situation where we can activate the leader's effect, crushing any card that we want. So let's say Rocket Luffy. Put them back here in life, and we are 7000 power leader, 8000 power attack on board, Fist Luffy on board that can swing the next turn also for 8k. And one additional thing that is really strong about this setup, if your opponent can't take any of those lives, the next turn when you untap, you can activate the Luffy to draw and trash the life, and then follow up with the loop of 9000 power 1 life leader, or maybe 7000 power again 2 life, depending how threatening the board of your opponent is. And this is really strong because every turn for free you are searching for another Moria. So this is something that your opponent has to be mindful, and then you swing 8, you swing 9 and so on, and you apply a lot of pressure. Matchups. Let's start with Blue Doflamingo, as it's one of the top decks in 8.5 and even OP09. Most of the lists play Teach, because of that I'm choosing to go first in this matchup. It helps to ease the aggression and play around Pudding because we don't draw the card. However, going second is also okay, especially now when a lot of Western players opt for more mid-range control style of Doffy, with events and 10 cost Kaido. In this matchup, Key cards are Babies Hiyori, Adult Luffy and Blocker Sabo. We want to play Babies early to play around Pudding. Most of the time they will bounce them back to our hand with 4 cost low, but it's worth the try. If we are going second on 4th on turn, very common play is to swing 7 at rested 5k character and play Baby. If we play Kuzan here, we draw a card and risk getting him bounced back to hand, which creates easy pudding for our opponent. Magic number for pudding is 8 cards. If you risk going to 8 cards in hand, even if opponent swings 7k, counter with one of Big Brother to set up him in trash and take life. This way, even if they pudding you on 7 hand cards, at least you have Big Brothers already in trash for awakening. We want to find Rocket Luffy to clear 4 cost 6k power characters like Boa and Weevil. We can use Hiyori in mid game to buff a leader to 7k to ease the aggression. Even better if we can do it with Rocket Luffy or Ace. Result should be that we clear the board either by attacking or popping the Rocket Luffy but still have our original life. Common situation that you will encounter in this matchup is that you will see the huge board on your 7th on turn and will need to awaken to survive. Please avoid full awakening here. It's too much resources. Try to utilize Hiyori or Ivankov if you play it and awaken as 7k power 2 life leader. Also, most of the time you will already have Baby on board, so you can even go into Hiyori plus Sabo from hand depending on the board state. The main idea for the matchup is to create a situation that will allow us to loop 9k power base 1 life leader. From this point on you should be winning. If your opponent is starving you, try to find a way to play Moria on curve. You can play Sabo turn before to set up Kuzan or Nami in trash and Garp to have Moria targets. Blue decks can answer Moria only with Red Rock, which is basically passing a turn. So key points: play Babies early to play around Pudding, consider under countering with Big Brothers, use Hiyori in mid game and transform Rocket or Ace to control the board. Try to reach late game and start looping 9k power 1 life leader to play around Perfume Femur. Next, let's talk about Mirror. In Mirror I prefer to go second for better curve and card advantage. Key cards: Garp, Kuzan, Big Luffy, Moria and Awakener. In Mirror it's important to understand that we need to attack. Once our opponent goes to 0, he will start losing cards from hand each turn. Also, in this way we prevent any additional value for our opponent like Flampe drawing cards, Hiyori awakening with additional life, or even filling up the trash with 5 cost Luffy. Rule of thumb is you want to awaken second, but play the Moria first. Most of the time the matches are really close and come down to having more Morias or 1 card difference. That's why it's important to find a turn to extract as many cards from your opponent as possible. You can do it by planting 5 cost Luffy on board. Even if your opponent already awakened but have only 1 blocker, it might be beneficial to awaken with the babies and attach them to your 5 cost Luffy to extract cards from the opponent. It's actually one of the cheese strategies when you are going first. You plant Luffy on 5 and 7 dawn, and once your opponent awakens on 8 dawn, you try to pressure him with Luffy attacks, your own awakening and leader swing. It gets even more spicy if you play list with Ace, as it's additional surprise factor. It might be especially useful if your opponent didn't awaken yet and takes life carelessly. In general, going first you are the aggressor, going second you play for card advantage. Attack your opponent so he has to awaken early and start losing cards from hand. 5 cost Luffy is the most important card for extracting cards from your opponent when awakening with babies. Often who sees more Moria will win, but there is much more to Mirror than that, so don't give up and practice to notice small advantage indicators for victory. Next matchup, Lucci. One of our good matchups. As long as we see blocker Sabo and Moria, we should win. I prefer to go second against Lucci to have card advantage and better curve. If we play Garp on turn 1, please don't attack with him on turn 2. Just gem with leader or play Kuzan. If you attack with Garp, Lucci will have a free leader's effect for filling up the trash. Most Lucci players will starve you, so you want to force them to attack you for leader's effect. If you are able to play 5 cost Luffy on curve and follow up with Sabo, Sabo, the game is locked. But most often Lucci will just remove the Luffy the moment you play him, and because they are starving you, it's okay to use Luffy's effect the turn you play him. If you go second and are searching for the Kuzan to play on turn 2, it's okay to play Flampe or even Makino on turn 1. Overall, push life in early mid game, try to stick 5 cost Luffy for pressure and easier awakening, protect the board with Sabo, chain Moria and win. Next matchup, Bonnie. The hardest matchup in the game. Try to go second and mulligan for Kuzan. Important, if Bonnie plays a searcher on turn 1, you have to play a character on your turn 1. Optimally it would be Garp, but if not possible, play anything. Flampe, Makino or even a baby. Reason is, most common Bonnie play is to play searcher on 1 Dawn, and then another one on 3 Dawn turn. Then, for the remaining 2 Dawn, rest both of them for effect. If you don't play anything, you can get rid only of one of them. It would generate a lot of value for Bonnie, so please always play something if they open with Searcher on 1 Dawn. Next important thing is to play around your Kuzan. Plant him on board, follow up with 5 cost Luffy to reach 2 life cards, so your Rocket Luffy is live. Also, if you play 5 cost Luffy on 6 Dawn turn, keep him and Kuzan standing and activate Luffy's effect. Reason is, on 7 Dawn turn you should expect Hody Jones, so we want at least Luffy to stick and take over board the next turn. The most dangerous mid-game card is Cavendish. If possible, remove him on side, either with Kuzan Rocket combo or if you play any 5 cost removal like Sabo or Shigan. If removing Cavendish is not possible, please make sure you attack into him once he's rested. It should be your number 1 priority to get rid of this card. Another common problem is 8 cost Kid. To play around it, please try to set up Kuzan on board the turn before 8 cost Kid can be played. Most of the time it will be our Moria turn on 8 Dawn. In the end game, please be aware of 10 cost Doffy and attack accordingly. Remember that you can attack and then replace your characters by playing over them to play around Doffy's effect. Overall, matchup is quite hard and winning against good Bonnie player is close to impossible. To have a fighting chance, play Garp or Flampe early to contest searchers, mulligan and play Kuzan to threaten removal, KO Cavendish on side, and be ready for 8 cost Kid by playing Kuzan turn before. Activate 5 cost Luffy if played on 6 Dawn turn to play around Hody. After all, Bonnie is a green deck, and like every green deck, she wins through board. As long as you are able to fight the board, you should be able to win, but it's not easy. NL. Against NL we want to go second for card advantage and strong curve. Key card in this matchup is 5 cost Luffy. We want to play as many of them as possible. Not only its strong attack every turn, but also NL players will starve you and clog your life with 8 cost Katakuri. So it's your best interest to unclog the life with 5 cost Luffy or Makino. Good NL players understand that 5 cost Luffy is a threat and will try to remove him with Nami. Because of that, we want to avoid attacking NL in the early game. By not attacking, we limit the cards they get to find Nami and answer our 5 cost Luffy on curve. If we are lucky enough and they miss Nami, they can even be forced to answer Luffy with Raigo, which in best case scenario will burn 3 cards for free from their life. Before's first big drop from NL, we want to reduce their life. To play around Yamato and Ace, keep them at 2 life until you can threaten lethal. To play around Katakuri, push them to 1 or 0 life so they can't play him down without a risk. In the late game we want to protect our board with Sabo and chain Moria. Once you have enough attacks to threaten lethal, start poking the life with small attacks first to get some cards from NL. If you can't threaten lethal but there are some characters rested on opponent's board, you can turn into them. Overall, very grindy matchup and relies a lot on fundamentals. I played against 3 NL players in Utrecht and each game was a climb with a lot of thinking how to structure the turn to get the most cards from my opponent. The moment you make them broke, you win. Nami. Against Nami there are advantages for going first and second. If you go first, you can play 5 cost Luffy on curve and start attacking earlier. If you go second, you can combo here with 5 cost Luffy and Baby to have him on board on your 4 Dawn turn. Overall, in this matchup, Awakeners and 5 cost Luffy are the key. If you run the list with aces, your win rate should increase as well. Plan is to spam the board with adult characters as soon as possible. Play your Makino early to check the life for any big brothers and play the babies accordingly. If you have Hiyori combo in hand, play it on 4 dawn turn and start the pressure. Playing against Nami, each 2 dawn equal 4000 power counter. With inclusion of White Snake, we need to adjust our math on the fly. If we have a lot of attacks, it's good to swing for 6000 power to play around White Snake. However, we play a lot of high power characters, so we can adjust depending on how many dawn are left on Nami's side. Cool thing you can do is to swing first with your biggest character like Gecko Moria and see how they react. If they counter here, count the dawn cards left and adjust attacks accordingly. If they take it, might be better to develop the board and let them burn high amount of unused dawn cards. One last tip, if possible, play as much as possible around Snake Dance. If there is Kaya on board, snipe her with Rocket Luffy and then attack. If Nami returns Kaya to hand with Snake Dance, it's over. Now let's speak shortly about OP09 relevant matchups. First is Purple Luffy, which is stronger than ever and is a bad matchup for us. We want to go first to steal their perfect curve. In this matchup, we want to survive until late game. They will be very aggressive in the early and mid game, so early chip blockers are important. Sangoro should be your first priority to remove, because he can generate insane amount of value. We should aim to loop 9k power base 1 life, so Hiyori is very important in this matchup. We need to do that because of Usohachi that can rest our blockers, so either loop with 1 life up, or if you need to go to 0 life, play 1 additional blocker. When pushing damage, be mindful of 1 cost event that can prevent your lethal push, so try to play safe as much as possible and maybe go for 1 more turn. New strong leader in OP09 is Shanks. It's not easy matchup to navigate, but here are some initial thoughts. Focus on reducing the Shanks life in early and mid game. Avoid giving them free leaders effect on your leader swings. Because of that, going second is better. You can jam on 4 dawn turn, swing 6k and play 5 cost Luffy on 6 dawn turn. When you awaken, remember to play around Roger by keeping 1 life up. You can answer 10 dawn character with Raigo and use the remaining 4 dawn to awaken with 1 baby. Another troublesome leader is Blackbeard. Terrible matchup. I don't have much experience yet, but initial thoughts are: 5 cost Luffy is a key to this matchup as our on-play abilities will be turned off. If possible, we want to use awakeners early before they are turned off. By playing cards like Makino or Hiyori on turn 1 or turn 2, we can bring strong bodies into play, especially if we can pull off Hiyori 5 cost Luffy combo like in Nami's matchup. Depending when Blackbeard starts using his leader's effect, we might be able to squeeze Sabo in to protect the board from removal. In the late game, be ready to answer 10 cost Blackbeard with Raigo. Once I get more knowledge and testing in OP09, I will upload relevant videos. For the least update on OP09, I would probably start with Putichai version and adjust to the expected meta. I already noticed players testing for cost Shirahoshi, which is a nice answer for Shanks matchup. You can play her of Moria and combine with Baby Luffy for Rocket Luffy removal into 8 cost characters. On top of that, she is a blocker that can stop 10 cost Shanks or even help in Purple Luffy matchup. And that's it for today's ultimate guide for BY Luffy, or masterclass if you will. Because it was my first such deep dive content on this channel, let me know in the comments below if you like the video. From now on, full focus goes into OP09 content, so see you in the next video. Thank you for watching, bye bye.